You probably saw this morning that former President Trump, now 78 and in his second term, is at Walter Reed for his annual physical.
Yeah, April 11th, 2025. It's the first one we're hearing about since he was sworn in again. Big news item.
Right. So we thought we'd maybe dive into what these presidential physicals actually, entail, what they mean.
Definitely. Kind of figure out what's really going on beyond just the headline itself.
Exactly. It seems like more than just a regular doctor's visit when it's the president.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole other layer of significance. And seeing that his schedule has him there for almost 5 hours.
4 hours and 45 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, precisely. So it's not just a quick check in and out. It's comprehensive.
That's a good chunk of the day.
Mm.
So, okay, when they do these big physicals, what are the sort of baseline things they're looking at?
Well, standard stuff first. If we look at insights from Dr. Celine Gounder, this CBS News medical contributor,
Right.
the foundation is pretty much what you'd expect in any thorough physical. They'll check vital signs, blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, the real basics.
Okay, the usual numbers you get at your own checkup. Makes sense.
Exactly. And then they'll do the hands-on stuff, listening to the heart and lungs, make sure everything sounds okay, and an abdominal exam, feeling for anything unusual in that area.
Got it. So, checking the basic mechanics of the body, and then I assume they do tests as well, blood work.
Absolutely. Basic lab work is definitely key. That would, typically include checking cholesterol levels, blood sugar.
Screening for diabetes, heart risk, that kind of thing.
Precisely. And potentially tests for kidney and liver function, too. These blood tests give a much broader picture of his overall health, biochemically speaking.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of the standard checks. But what if there's a reason to dig deeper? You mentioned Dr. Gounder said, depending on history.
Right. If there are pre-existing conditions or, things in his past medical record that maybe raise a flag, they likely order more specific tests.
Like what kind of things?
Well, for instance, an EKG that measures the heart's electrical activity. Useful for checking rhythm issues or signs of heart disease.
Okay.
Or maybe a chest x-ray to get an image of the lungs and heart structure.
Right.
And if there were specific heart concerns, they could go for an ultrasound of the heart, that's an echocardiogram, for a really detailed look at how it's functioning.
So they can really customize the exam based on his specific health background?
They certainly can and should.
Now, Dr. Gounder also said something I thought was really interesting. She called the presidential physical a curated medical PR event. Let's unpack that a little.
Yeah, that's a very insightful phrase, isn't it?
It really is. What does that imply? It sounds like there's more going on than just the medicine.
Well, yeah. While the exam itself is a genuine health assessment, it happens under this intense public spotlight, and it has real political weight.
Right, the president's health matters a lot.
Exactly. It can affect policy, markets, international relations, everything. So there's immense pressure to reassure the public that the lighter is fit for the job.
Ah, so the way the information is released is part of that reassurance strategy.
Precisely. The information shared is often very carefully managed. It's about building confidence, managing perceptions.
So it's not just what the doctors find, but how it's presented to us.
Yes. Think about it. The White House decides what details get released, when they get released, the overall framing. It lets them shape the narrative around his health. We've seen this with presidents throughout history.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a tricky balance, isn't it? Transparency versus projecting strength.
A very delicate balance.
Now, we do have some past info on President Trump's health, don't we? This isn't totally new territory.
That's right. We have a few reference points. His last big physical we know about was back in September 2023.
But the details from that were pretty scarce, weren't they, according to that CBS report?
Very limited, yes. What we mainly saw was a letter that Trump himself posted a couple months later in November 2023 from his doctor then, Dr. Bruce Ehrenwald.
And what did that letter actually say? What were the highlights?
Well, Dr. Ehrenwald summed up the September findings. He stated the president's overall health is excellent, and his physical exams were well within the normal range.
Okay, excellent.
And he also notably mentioned that President Trump's cognitive exams were exceptional.
Exceptional, that's a strong word. But thinking about that PR event idea, what questions does a letter like that raise?
Well, excellent and exceptional sound great, obviously. But the letter lacked the specific data points and numbers that would let someone independently assess his health.
Like what was missing?
No vital signs mentioned, no blood pressure, no heart rate, nothing on cholesterol or blood sugar levels, and no list of medications he might be taking.
So we got the headline, excellent health, but none of the underlying details. It really does underline that idea of carefully managed information.
It certainly seems to fit that pattern. The focus was purely on the positive summary, which, serves that reassurance function. But without specifics, it's hard to get a truly objective picture from just that letter.
Right. Now, the report also mentioned something pretty dramatic, that incident last July where Mr. Trump's ear was reportedly struck by a bullet.
Yes, that was quite something at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania, according to the reports.
And after that happened, Representative Ronnie Jackson, who used to be Trump's White House doctor, he put out a memo.
That's right. Dr. Jackson, who's a physician himself, of course, his memo said he'd reviewed the hospital records from the incident.
And what was his assessment?
He stated that President Trump was doing extremely well after the event and that no long-term health effects were expected.
Okay. And Mr. Trump himself has said he's fine since then.
Yes, he said he hasn't had any lingering issues, and the reports mention his ear has healed.
Wow. A bullet hitting the ear. That's intense. But again, the information comes via these official summaries. It kind of highlights how we often get filtered accounts, not the raw medical reports.
That's a really key observation. The flow of information is controlled. We're often relying on interpretations, not the direct data itself.
Now, going back a bit further, we do have some harder numbers from his last physical during his first term, right? That was June 2020.
Yes, from that one, the White House did release a couple of specific figures.
What were they?
They reported his weight at 244 pounds, and his blood pressure was 121/79.
Okay, so at least some concrete data points from a few years back. But like you said, health isn't static.
Absolutely not, especially as people age. What was true in 2020 isn't necessarily his current status, which is why these regular checks are important, even if the public reporting varies.
So as we wait for any word from today's physical at Walter Reed, it seems like we're looking at it in a few ways. There's the actual medical stuff happening.
The tests, the exams.
Then there's the whole political context, the need to reassure people.
Right, the PR event aspect we talked about.
And then there's how whatever they find will actually be communicated. Or maybe not fully communicated.
Exactly. It's this really fascinating mix of medicine, politics, and public communication. And yeah, like you said at the start, almost 5 hours allocated.
Yeah.
That suggests they're doing a pretty deep dive medically.
Yeah.
What gets shared publicly,
Right.
well, that remains to be seen.
Right. So just to quickly recap for everyone, President Trump is having his annual physical today, the first of the second term. It involves standard medical checks, but it's also politically significant for assuring the public he's fit to serve. We know details from his last big exam in 2023 were limited mainly a letter saying excellent overall health and exceptional cognitive function, but no hard numbers.
Right.
We also heard about the bullet incident last July affecting his ear, from which he reportedly recovered fully.
Yes.
And going back to June 2020, we have a weight of 244 pounds and blood pressure of 121/79 from that time.
That covers the main points we have so far.
Which really brings us to a bigger question, doesn't it? It's something maybe for listeners to think about.
Yeah.
When it comes to the health of a president or any major leader, how much information do we, the public, actually need? Or maybe how much are we entitled to?
That's a great point. Where is that line between the public's right or need to know their leader is capable and the individual's basic right to medical privacy?
It's not an easy question. There's a real tension there.
Definitely not easy.
Yeah.
Finding that balance between transparency and personal privacy. It's something worth mulling over as we see how this latest chapter unfolds.